Hello again, Angela here. Still smoking. So I went mad earlier this year. I did it very publicly in front of everyone. It was lovely. There's some videos on my page which you can watch. So I thought it's probably just best to make another video now. So my name is Angela, and Dr. Angela Williams, and I have written a book called Snakes and Ladders. It's quite a wonderful book, if I do say so myself. It's currently with Affirm Publishers in Melbourne, and if they don't want it, then I'm pretty sure someone else will want it. Right, so I am making you a video about trauma and writing and what it's like to write about your own trauma. So just for those who don't know me and haven't read the book, this is how I'm selling it right now. Angela Williams just couldn't catch a break. She lost her father to alcohol as a child and was then taken hostage by her mother's madness. Programmed with scripts of heroin addiction, homelessness and unhealthy sex work, Angela found herself with the almost inevitable criminal record in 1996 and then decided to get back on track. Fast forward to 2010. Angela's found her path. She's got her son back in her care, is graduating from uni with all the honours and looks set for marvellous success. Then she steps off the wrong gutter, gets taken out by a postie bike and ends up back in the slammer. She'd forgotten to chase up some paperwork after the first ride on the merry-go-round of the New South Wales justice system. Society had to see justice being served. A writer, thinker and yeller, Angela Williams is mildly notorious for seeing problems and pointing them out. She's tussled with Fred Nile in the Sydney Morning Herald, taken academia to task in The Guardian's Anonymous Academic, gone to crikey about the treatment of mentally ill women in prison, and most recently blown the whistle on dangerous risks in her former charity workplace. Angela does one thing really well: find problems and yell about them. This book is her first-hand story of the New South Wales justice system. Yeah, so I've spent 8 years writing this book. I started writing it whilst on home detention in 2010. Some of the first material for the book was written in a private invite-only blog that I maintained while on home detention. Whilst ridiculously convinced that I wasn't allowed to publish, they should have put that in writing. No, right, they didn't put it in writing, so I could have published the whole time. Anyway, so I wrote some really awful stuff. I had kind of planned on never reading any of this bit out loud, but it's a really good example of how I handle the topic of my traumas in my writing. So I'm going to read you a little excerpt from my book, Snakes and Ladders. This is from the chapter Angrier Women, which is set in 1990. What a long time ago, hey? Okay, this is hard to read, so hang on a second. I'm such an addict. It's cool. I feel alive. Okay, this isn't very long and it's not very detailed and it stops right before it gets interesting. That bit I will never read out loud. This is an excerpt from the chapter Angrier Women from my book Snakes and Ladders. I didn't think about the fear then, and I find it hard to think about it now. I lose myself in details instead. It wasn't a Saturday, Sunday or Wednesday because we weren't at church. It was winter. I could smell the open fire from the other end of the house. My mother and I had had the talk about a year before this. She was in a loquacious mood and had taken me aside to explain the facts of life and pass on a packet of sanitary pads. It was a long and creepy conversation with intonations about how this womanly moment would increase my danger from men. She dug her long fingernails into the soft skin above my pelvis as she explained the pains I would feel and what would happen next, kneading at my belly in a mildly sexual manner and pulling me close as I winced. At this stage of my life, I assumed all mothers had these oddly erotic moments with their daughters. I convinced myself that this discomfort at her touch was teenage angst. After giving birth to my brother, Trevor, my mother had had a radical hysterectomy and so didn't bleed. It had to be the pads I used, she explained, or I would risk deflowering myself before my wedding night. The jocularity and intimacy of the conversation lulled me into a false sense of security. When I felt the pains in my stomach, there was a moment of excitement behind, under, and around the unnameable fear. A feeling that maybe in becoming a woman, I would finally earn her trust and respect. Maybe in this moment, becoming a woman like her, I could finally come to feel safe in this house, in her love for me. I just didn't think. Yeah, so the rest of that story is not lovely. You can read it later when the book comes out. So that's the kind of stuff I've had in my head. I've also written a lot about prison and psychiatric hospitals and heroin and rehabilitation and a little bit about methadone. Oh, and a sexy overdose scene. Very sexy overdose scene. Oh, and several also sexy strip search scenes. Yes. But anyway, so that's why I think, oh, and I am a doctor. I have a PhD. I'm a high school dropout with a PhD. So apparently I'm allowed to speak about these things. Right, so before, I have several questions here that have been asked of me from people on my Facebook page. There will be a link to that page down in the bottom of this thing somewhere, and you can come along and maybe next time I ask if anyone has questions, you can ask a question. But anyway, before I answer the 3 questions I've been asked over there, I'd just like to touch on my privileges in this situation. I've recently reread the book from cover to cover, all in one day, and was reminded again of the amazing privileges that I had that allowed me to slip into this system and out of it again so quickly. I look at some of the characters in my story with such love and empathy in my heart, knowing that they're stuck there. That situation is never changing. They're there. So when I talk about this story, my experiences in prison, I am a white-looking and sounding person. My name, Angela, does not set off any bells for people who are concerned. Sometimes people think I'm Italian. I'm university educated, despite being a high school dropout. I have 2 degrees and a doctorate in thinking about my memoir. And possibly most relevant to this conversation is that in 2001, after being admitted to St George Hospital in Sydney for following a suicide attempt, I met the most amazing man. It pretty much was love at first sight. He is my psychiatrist. I am lucky enough to receive very, very high-end, regular psychiatric care from someone who is committed to my well-being, that I have been bulk billed for since 2001. If it was not for my psychiatrist, the shrinkola in the book, everyone's favourite character, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I definitely wouldn't be a doctor, and I would never have written this book. All right, thanks, Shrinkola, you rock. Okay, so those are my privileges in this situation. Obviously, I'm running from a script. Can't do anything else. Anyway, so I might just fast forward all the bits where I smoke, hey. I'm not going to hide it because it's one of my symptoms, hey. All right, so let's go into these questions. Nicole asked me, thank you, Nicole, your question is a hard one. I moved it right up to first because I thought, why not? Nicole asked, when you're writing about trauma, do you sometimes remember things that you have blocked out previously? All right, so I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder and a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and about 3 months ago, I got my first ever session treatment of electroconvulsive therapy. Yeah, that's right. They strapped me to some kind of electrodes and shot it through my brain. Seems to have helped a bit, but it's hard work. It's hard work being mentally ill. So anyway, the hospital I went to was the amazing St John of God in Burwood. I know that they've had some not nice things happen there in the past, which us of the New South Wales LGBT community know. They've come a long way, guys. They treated me like a human being and other things too. So this was my first ever stay in a psychiatric hospital and a private psychiatric hospital. And while I was there, I met this idea that I'd kind of stumbled across before, but which makes a lot more sense. The therapy I was doing there and am now kind of continuing is called dialectical behavioural therapy. It gets you to look at things that don't make sense next to each other and understand how they could make sense. Okay, so Nicole, you asked me, you said, when you're writing about trauma, do you sometimes remember things that you have blocked out previously? I've just had a whole petting zoo of trauma in my life. It goes from father dying at a very young age whilst I was there, from alcohol-induced liver damage, all the way through to, like a mother who was a monster. And then, of course, when you leave home from a parent who is a monster, you seek out other monsters to fill in all those gaps. I've found some doozies. A guy trained by the UK government who was trying to kill me. Oh, let's not start listing, that's gross. But anyway, I've had a lot of traumas in my life. I've been to prison, I've been sexually assaulted, I've been through a criminal trial for sexual assault. That was exciting. I spent 5 days on the witness stand being cross-examined. Again, exciting. I'm obviously using exciting in a very sarcastic way. So anyway, my point is I have a lot of traumas in my life, and I believe that they are all linked back to those early traumas, to my mother and my father. So part of how you live with trauma is that you compartmentalize it. You take it and you put it away somewhere. Find another spot for it. I need to read these quotes from this amazing interview I found on Side Effects Public Media, links down there somewhere, with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote the book in 2014, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind and the Body in the Healing of Trauma. This is mostly that kind of neuroplasticity stuff where we talk about the idea that the way our brain is wired changes in reaction to environmental factors. So horrible things that happen to you as a child change your brain structure. Like your brain structure, that's ridiculous. For like 30 something years I was carrying around this idea that the trauma was just happening in here and kind of up here, but not in here, like moving stuff around. That's unbelievable. So anyway, somewhere else in this interview, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk says that the infant brain is basically just an undifferentiated blob. It's waiting for things to happen in its environment to change it, mould it, teach it. Teach it, yeah. So anyway, in this interview, van der Kolk was asked, what is the mechanism by which traumatic events change the brain? And BK said, the brain is formed by feedback from the environment. It is a profoundly relational part of our body. In a healthy developmental environment, your brain gets to feel a sense of pleasure, engagement, and exploration. Your brain opens up to learn, to see things, to accumulate information, to form friendships. When you're traumatized, you're afraid of what you're feeling because your feeling is always terror or fear or helplessness. If you're an adult and life's been good to you and something bad happens, that sort of injures a little piece of the whole structure. But toxic stress in childhood from abandonment or chronic violence has pervasive effects on the capacity to pay attention, to learn, to see where other people are coming from, and it really creates havoc with the whole social environment. It leads to criminality and drug addiction and chronic illness and people going to prison and repetition of trauma on the next generation. When you've got old traumas, young traumas, some part of you is always going to be feeling and responding to that trauma. Every time you encounter a new situation that reminds you in any way, and it's totally on a subconscious level, not happening. You have no idea it's here. You now is dealing with what's happening now, filtered through what happened then, and all of the learned coping mechanisms and behaviours that you used as to survive the original trauma. That's all still here in you. For me, this has come out as my probably one of the worst symptoms of my trauma is that hyper awareness and vigilance, and hi Twitter, and that tracking of my entire environment all the time. It's led me to be very hypercritical and to look very deeply at things that I find wrong. And it's a constant waterfall of memory, response, body response, memory. You're in a loop. I don't remember before I started therapy. It's been 17 years and that's a long time ago. But I've always kind of been, on pins and needles, I've always been kind of aware of triggers and of the fact that there are still things that are suppressed that I don't know about. I have unpacked my early adulthood, my drug use, my very toxic, dangerous sex work. I'm not saying all sex work is toxic and dangerous. I did beautiful sex work that I loved, that was safe and comfortable, and I love you, Sonia. But all of that early stuff I did, it was dangerous, it was horrible, and what it was me trying to test out those survival skills that I'd learned as a child and see how they worked. So some of the skills, you don't know their skills. You don't know their skills till 15 years later when you're looking at them and going, wow, that saved my life. So wait a minute, what was your question? When you're writing about trauma, do you sometimes remember things that you have blocked out previously? Yes, yes I do. This whole process from beginning to end involved a lot of remembering. And as I argued in the first 300 words of my thesis, memory is difficult. It is subjective. It is different for everyone who remembers it. Memory is the kind of blueprint we keep for those neural changeways that have happened in our brain, and there has to be those little side roads, those hidden things. Yeah, I remember things all the time. I go to my psychiatrist about it. He is my professional reality consultant, and I'm not just talking childhood memories. I recently, as in the last month and a half, have remembered some traumas from the early 2000s that I've done quite a remarkable job of erasing, really. So yeah, I think that just as a trauma survivor, you sometimes remember things that you've blocked out previously. When you go poking at it with your fingers, it gets worse. All right, so oh, that's the thing that I wanted to say that I haven't said. That was probably the whole point of my video. Um, Writing about trauma is really, really different to talking about trauma in therapy. When you sit in your therapist's office and you talk, or your group or wherever you do this stuff, and you talk about your trauma, you have the feelings that you have to get past it. If you're not having those feelings, then it's just going to come back again later. So you have those feelings, you get them out, and then you can let go of them, right? But I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and one of my degrees is in creative writing. Oh, and my PhD is in creative writing, so I can't just put words on paper and give them to the world. I have to go through you have to get those moments of pain and trauma that in therapy you can sob about and let go. You have to get that moment and package it up for your readers. You've got to show them what it's like to be there in that moment, and to do that you have to break the story down into its tiniest narrative elements, work out which ones are working the best, put them all together, and then re-edit and re-edit and re-edit and re-edit until you don't even see it anymore. Yeah, writing trauma is much, much, much more difficult than talking about trauma. So yes, and the fact that it's all of those links, those little links, they are part of what makes it worse. All right, thanks, Nicole. That's a really hard question. Look, I don't even know how long we spent on that. 23 minutes. Awesome. Thank God for editing. All right, so Laura. Oh, I love this question, Laura. Thank you for asking me it. Laura asked, when you're writing about the trauma and you, I assume, feel ill and have physical reactions to it, do you continue writing or remove yourself for a while? I don't know. See, that whole living in this sack of trauma skin for so long, I feel uncomfortable a lot of the time, and I feel ill a lot of the time, and I feel symptoms of panic almost constantly at some stages of my life. Those who did university with me, my creative arts degree, would probably be fascinated to know that I spent the entire first 9 months of first year in full-on panic mode. That person that you saw at the uni bar, that's me responding to anxiety, free-floating, out-of-control anxiety. I'm really good at masking my pain from the world and from myself. So sometimes I don't even realise that I'm sick or all of those other things that happen to me until afterwards, or 3/4 of the way through it, or someone else says, hey, do you think so when it happens, I've got this amazing little coping mechanism. No, 2 of them: coffee and cigarettes. It's not healthy at all. It's not good for me. I should be exercising or doing yoga or other things that are productive, but no, I drink coffee and smoke cigarettes. My anxiety is medicated. Some amount of my medications are designed to lessen the impact of my anxiety. I try and maintain my meds schedule with much care. I don't know. There's absolutely been many moments in my writing process where I have slammed my computer closed and walked away. There's been moments where I have bent over double and cried into my lap whilst mostly while editing. Editing is shit, eh? When I'm writing, when it's coming out, that's just there, and I just do it, and I'm tears pouring down my face and words flying out my fingers. But editing, Oh, uh, uh, uh. Proofreaders. Sometimes I stop and sometimes I keep going. It depends on what the words are doing and what they need me to do at the time. Part of living this life and this body with this trauma means that I've had to learn to ignore my body sometimes. That being said, I've been an absolute hermit since January, and yeah, so obviously I can remove myself. No, but the book is, it's hard. It's hard, and sometimes you just have to close it and walk away, but sometimes just because it's hard is the best reason to keep going. So, yeah, depends. Depends on lots of things. Thanks, Laura. Great question. Renee, I love you. Oh, I love you so much. Renee drove me to St John of God Hospital. She's wonderful. She's a bit lovely. Renee says, I've just got to light my cigarette up. Hang on. Oh, look, I'm having some reactions. I want to walk away now. Good question, Laura. Okay. Renee says, interested to know if you predominantly do the dealing with trauma part first. I'm planning to write something and I'm not sure what after my current life circumstances have run their course. I'm thinking of a letter to someone format. With you, I'm guessing there is a lot more process that goes into a memoir. Oh, love. It can be cathartic as you write, and at each occasion you edit, don't. Oh, yes. I mean, yes, it's very cathartic. I love that bit. There is also subsequent bravery in revealing a memoir. Yes. No, I mean, it's so cool. Nothing to worry about, right? How do you know when you have dealt with enough of your trauma to bear the stress of publication? All right, so my 14 seconds of preparation for this video, I found out 2 questions here, Renee. So there's 2 questions. The first one is, do you do the dealing with trauma part first? Now, there are some stories that have to be told. You can't wait to process the trauma before you tell the story. That lovely No Friends But the Mountains from the Kurdish journalist Behruz Bouchani. Sorry if I've mispronounced your name, man. Who's been on Manus since 2013. He's just released his book written as little social media interactions. That book couldn't wait. It needed to be told now. We need to hear that story. He hasn't got the opportunity to deal with his trauma before he writes about it. If you do not know up close details of the trauma that people are dealing with on Manus and Nauru, you need to educate yourself. It's your job as an Australian. So it kind of links back to Nicole's question. You never know when you've dealt with the trauma. You never know when it's coming back. Shrinkola and I have broken up. I've completed my therapeutic relationship with Shrinkola like 3 times now. No, it was 2 times really, I'll be honest. And I just keep on ending up back in there. It's that body riddled with PTSD that's like responding and reacting and somehow just continuously ending up in stupid and dangerous situations. But we'll come to that in a minute. So I don't think there is any. This question kind of implies that there's a distinct line at the end of dealing with trauma, and another distinct line, which is the beginning of writing. For me, that's not possible. Some of the stuff that is in my book goes back to 2010, written in the moment while the pain was happening. Some of it was written the other day. And I've had a lot of trauma in between. I've had trauma related to the process of writing a book, but also trauma related to, the sexual assault case and 2 doozies of dangerous workplaces back to back with really, really awful safety for workers kind of priorities. But so you can't wait till you're not having trauma before you start writing. If it needs to get out, it'll get out somehow. And if it doesn't come out through a pen or the rattling fingers, it will come out through your body and your world. If you're writing about trauma, you're dealing with trauma. It's part of the therapeutic process. It's what we do. You can do it. You can write and feel at the same time. It doesn't kill you, despite all indications that it's going to. Okay, so thank you for that first question, Renee. Second question. How do you know when you have dealt with enough of your trauma to bear the stress of publication? All right, so my relationship with you, social media and videos and whatnot, has been a little patchy. One of my anxiety things is that I have a lot of trouble letting my words go out there into the world. Much more willing to speak them than write them, aren't I? In October last year, I have been at university since 2013. I started my doctorate in 2011. And last year, in 2017, at the end of the year, I finally got my first peer-reviewed publication, a article on trauma. Who would have thought? And memoir. It's links down there somewhere. That was a really long track. Once my PhD supervisor, Dr. Shady Cosgrove, once she yelled at me because a paper that I had presented at a conference, I then didn't submit for publication because I was so scared of the idea of a permanent record of my words. It's coming back to bite me on the bum now, you know, applying for academic jobs, having no publication record, but oh well, it happens. So anyway, that was stressful. This article that 3.5 people have read, stressful. But all I had to do was send it off and then do a little bit of revision and then send it off again. This book is a whole different matter. You guys might have noticed I've ramped it up a little bit lately. I'm sending some love to Affirm. Oh, yes. The publication process is going to be stressful. Since I've never published a book before, I don't actually know the intimate details of how stressful it will be. I have seen several of my friends publish books, and let me tell you, friends, I've wanted to kill every single one of you, but with love. Molly, I mean, I love you. You did a wonderful job. You're doing great. Keep going. So in January, after I got out of the first psychiatric hospital I was in this year, you know, right after the police got called to my house, and you guys saw that awesome video of them on my front veranda. How great is my son? Hey, so after that, I decided I should, the book back in 2016 won an award called the Affirm, the Varuna Affirm Mentorship Program. Varuna is a beautiful writer's retreat up in the Blue Mountains, lovely yellow house. Apply for things there, please. You deserve it. You deserve it. I deserve it. Varuna is amazing. So Varuna and Affirm hooked up, ran this competition. I won it. I got to go and stay at Varuna for a week with 2 of their lovely editors, including Ruby Ashore, who is the editor playing with my book right now. So when I got out of hospital, I thought probably, because so I had a couple of things go wrong since hanging out with the ladies in that lovely house. So I emailed Ruby, said, look, can we just do this? I said, can we just get it out there? And I said, I'm a bit mad at the moment. No, it's probably a bit more mad than that. She replied to me with the most lovely email and let me know, quite like gentle but brutal reminder that the publication process is going to be difficult and dangerous and hard. No, she didn't say dangerous, but it's going to be difficult. I know for myself that it's going to be dangerous because I know what my mental health is like. So anyway, she kind of implied that it would be best for me to be nice and sane before we go about publishing the book. So since getting out of hospital after the shocking events of the electroconvulsive therapy, I get that joke for the rest of my life, guys. You can't take it. You have to laugh every single time I say shocking. So anyway, after that, I came home and I wanted to get back into the book, right? So I did. I've poked at it and I've poked at it and I've poked at it. There's been a massive rewrite since December 2016. And the book is a very different beast now. I think I'm almost happy with it. It's at the end. Never happy with the end. But I'm hoping to have it out sometime in the next 18 months for those lovely people who are desperately wanting it. If a firm doesn't want it, guys, we'll just go ahead and do it ourselves, all right? As many of you keep suggesting. So I made the call right before I sent the book back. A friend of mine, Peter, said to me, because I've been a bit worried about what I'm going to do. I'm not sure I can work. I'm not sure I can write. Well, I can kind of write, but, you know, I don't feel very stable at the moment and not very, not having a lot of positivity for the future. So my friend Pete said to me, well, if you don't feel like you can do anything now, like, look at the stuff that you have done. I wrote this damn book, guys. So I figure I might not be up for much at the moment, but I can post excerpts from my book on Facebook and get more of you guys liking my page and tell you about the process of writing. So I don't know if I'll ever know, Renee, that I've dealt with enough of my trauma to handle the stress of publication. My wonderful track record of finding new traumas every 14 seconds has kind of convinced me that living in this body with this history and this bizarrely rewired brain means that maybe there's never going to be a better time than now. Or maybe this is as sane as I get. Maybe it's the perfect time to publish a book. So, yes, wonderful questions, Renee. Thank you. This has been a really interesting process for me. I mostly wanted to show you guys me not mad and screaming about my former charity workplace. So this is me talking about trauma and writing. Thank God for editing, hey. Don't smoke, kids. It's really bad for you. You will become addicted and you won't be able to stop. And then people will leave comments on your video telling you how you really would be able to stop if you just put your time and effort into it. Guys, I'm mentally ill, okay? I'll quit smoking when I'm sane. Thank you. Oh, yeah, come over to my page on Facebook, like it, hang out, talk to me. I'm really not that scary, I promise.